We're now going to have Ben Kepes from Diversity, and he will be joined by Cat Robinson from the Kiwi Landing Pad on video conference. So hopefully Cat will be there shortly. Now, Ben is the principal and founder of Diversity. It's a consultancy specialising in SaaS, cloud computing and business strategy, where he provides various services including commentary, consulting, advisory and investment.
Yes,
and one of his passions is helping startups get to market and grow to scale. Joining us on the screen, yes, we have the thumbs up. Cat Robinson is the director of the Kiwi Landing Pad in San Francisco, and she was also a founding member of both Xero and Optimize. And please join me in welcoming both Ben and Cat.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Cat.
Yes, I can. Hi.
Hey Cat, I can see you, you can't see me.
Oh.
I kind of feel like I should be talking from behind a screen somewhere. It's kind of a bit weird to be doing a panel discussion with someone that's remote, but anyway. So I'm really stoked to be doing this, albeit virtually, with Cat. Cat's got a really interesting history. Most people that know her probably know her currently as head honcho, chief wrangler, cat herder at the Kiwi Landing Pad. But really interesting background. Cat was deeply involved with probably the best known startup to come out of New Zealand, but as well as that, another organisation that was lesser known that did an interesting pivot and had a really successful exit. So Cat, if you can tell us a little bit about yourself and your history that's taken you to where you are now.
Right. Thanks, and good afternoon, everybody. And it's a pleasure talking to you all from San Francisco today. So I guess I've had a pretty unorthodox, or unconventional kind of career path that's taken me through into the IT sector. I talked with Rod about this idea for an online accounting application back in 2006, and was involved in the founding team. I was the second employee on board, and my role was really about marketing and sort of formulating the go-to-market plan and marketing that would help us become or get to our goal of becoming a global accounting solution. I also happen to be married to somebody who is a technical entrepreneur, and during my time at Xero, I used to talk to him about task management systems, and he actually took that on board and created one called Action This. And in late 2007, I went off and joined Ed in Action This, and again did the same sort of roles in marketing and foundation. And while we were out selling Action This, we discovered some technology that speeds up the load times of websites. And so we pivoted from Action This and became Optimize, and we closed funding for Optimize in April 2009, and we were acquired in July 2011. And our team all decided to come to San Francisco. That wasn't part of the acquisition deal. And for myself, I wasn't part of the acquisition at all. And I joined the Kiwi Landing Pad in 2012.
Cool. So that's really interesting because New Zealand's quite polarised in terms of the stories it tells around technology, around startups, and clearly we hear maybe two or three stories. We hear the Xero story. Recently, we've heard the SLI story. Maybe we hear the Orion Health story sometimes. But there's some really interesting success stories happening. Optimize was fantastic. We heard earlier about Execute that I was an investor in that was acquired recently by a Canadian company. So it's actually a lot more nuanced than the media and the general public would think. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing at the Kiwi Landing Pad, what the kind of ethos of what you're trying to achieve there is.
So the landing pad is a very externally focused vehicle of the New Zealand IT sector. What we're primarily about is helping early stage companies get into market and integrate into the San Francisco and Silicon Valley Bay area tech community. it's not about creating little New Zealand inside that big machine, but it's actually helping our companies get out there and get involved into the local community. And San Francisco itself is a great base, a great place to do that from, because a lot of the businesses there are so externally focused, as opposed to, Silicon Valley itself is very campus focused. It's very, Facebook and Google, companies that sort of bust their employees down and, they're expected to work, sort of 24/7 inside these big machines. Whereas up in San Francisco, it's a lot more outwardly focused. It's about getting out to events. It's about pitching your ideas. It's about really integrating into the sort of the local tech scene.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I think there's some parallels there in terms of some stuff that I've seen. I've long been a little bit critical of the incubator scene in New Zealand, because what we tend to do, in the same way that the campuses in Silicon Valley do, we sort of cloister startups in these kind of rooms that are a little bit warmer than they need to be, and a little bit cosier and less drafty than they need to be, and that doesn't do anything to discourage them from staying here in New Zealand. When I talk to startups, and I talk to startups a bunch all around the world, but I still talk to them a bunch here, and my number one piece of advice, because I'm kind of simple and I don't have much advice, is to go to a travel agent or to go online. Actually, you can do that online at the moment now. It's amazing, and buy a ticket on NZ8 to San Francisco, because it's not actually that hard. What's your thoughts around that incubator scene in New Zealand? You're sitting there in San Francisco and you see how easy it is to actually get there. Is there value to people waiting?
So Ben, I think, for me, incubators work really, really well for eggs. They are an environment that is very, warm and cozy, and, you can provide that nutrition, and it's very sort of monocotyleded and safe, and once that egg is sort of ready, you can take the chick and put it with its sort of fellow chickens, and it's all safe. But ideas aren't eggs, and ideas need to be exposed to the challenges of doing business, and exposed to what it's really like to do business, particularly here, in the US. And I think that it's really, really important that we get these businesses there early. And one of the issues that I see in that sort of thinking, that sort of incubator space sort of thinking, is that again it's very intrinsically focused, and for New Zealand what that can mean is a very, very loud game of indoor baseball, where it's quite hard to sort of lift the roof up and really put those steps in place to get yourself up and out of there. So what I sort of see here is you see businesses that are out there, entrepreneurs that are out there pitching just like they do in New Zealand, but they really take on board, that sort of feedback. And I spend a lot of my time out at pitch events and networking events, and I have seen companies booed off the stage, and I've seen them come back a few weeks later with a much more refined idea, with a much better understanding of what their market is, for example.
You've obviously been in the US too long, because it's actually indoor rugby over here, not indoor baseball. But anyway, we'll let that one slide. I mean, it's kind of funny, because I only started doing this whole tech stuff, I guess, 8 or 10 years ago. And so I distinctly remember the first time I ever visited San Francisco. I had to look up on a map where Silicon Valley actually was, because I didn't realise it was in the Bay Area. I'd travelled a lot, done my OE, done all that sort of stuff. But I was this sort of New Zealander that, wow, Google, wow, one day I could visit there. Well, it's actually kind of amazing for those in the room that haven't been up there. These people in these places are totally accessible. Everyone in the Valley, everyone in the Bay Area wants to share. Everyone's happy to hang out, to have a chat. It's really, really easy to find these people. And I suspect, Kat, that you see that when companies come up, they're sort of shell-shocked about how easy it actually was and why they didn't do it earlier.
That's right, and I think typically for New Zealand companies and some of the agencies that have been involved, we've either paid someone or we've sort of put layers between our businesses and the opportunities, or our businesses and the American opportunities, so that sort of translation layer, I guess, has gotten quite confused. Nowadays there really isn't a need to bring somebody on board primarily for their Rolodex, because, like you say, people are so accessible. It's not that hard to get in front of a VC or whoever it is that you want to meet, but you've got to think about how you're going to do that, what steps you're going to take, and what you want to ask them. Often people, it's almost for the sycophantic reasons almost that they want to meet those people, not necessarily to, sort of help their business.
Yeah, it's interesting, and you're right, because on the one hand, while I say it's really easy and these people are very accessible, on the other, there is this sort of ethos coming from New Zealand that, well, we're New Zealand, the whole world loves us, everyone knows Flight of the Conchords and Lord of the Rings, all we have to say is talk in our funny accent and everyone will just swoon all over us. And yeah, people love New Zealand, it's a great place to have a holiday. That doesn't mean anything. We're going up there to get customers, to get funding, to do whatever. The fact that we come from this amazing country that has all this crazy stuff makes not one bit of difference. So on the one hand, it's super easy to connect with people up in the Bay Area, but on the other, going in there and saying, hey, I'm Ben from New Zealand, I've got a funny accent, and you should give me $3 million in investment because I've got a funny accent and an idea, isn't going to cut it. So people really need to work on the pitch, because these people are accessible, but often you've only got one chance. You've got your 30 seconds, you go and you do your message, make sure it's right. So don't put off going up there, but at the same time, don't think that you're just going to wing it on the fact that the guys from Flight of the Conchords or whatever. Is that what you see, Kat?
Absolutely. And it's again coming back to putting together the steps that are going to get you to whatever your goal is, and working back from that, and having a strategy. And when you think about, if you focus, say, on the VC piece, it's about identifying who the investors that are looking to invest in a company at your size, that have the right networks that can help your company get to those next steps. It's thinking really strategically about that stuff. Otherwise, you're just wasting each other's time.
Sure. So we haven't been nearly contentious enough, so it's time to get a few arguments going. If not between us, then between us and everyone else in the ecosystem here. That word ecosystem, you've talked about funding. A lot of people, a lot of big names here in New Zealand, maybe the Zero Mafia or the Trade Me Mafia, are quick to talk about the ecosystem and the ecosystem that they're nurturing and they're protecting and they're building. I have some particular thoughts about that before I get opinionated. Kat, what do you think? You can be honest.
So I think... Sure. So sorry, Ben, just to clarify a little bit deeper, you're talking about the New Zealand investors, or are you talking more broadly? Or?
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the idea that there are a big pool of investors here that really get it, that there is an ecosystem of nurturing, that the investors that are here both get the idea and are prepared to do the right thing by the entrepreneurs, compared to what you're seeing in the US.
So again, I think that a lot of the, there's so many sort of elements to that, and I think that broadly speaking, if we look at, again, New Zealand companies versus US companies, American companies grow up in the market that they are, going to be looking to be successful in. Whereas for us New Zealanders, we're having to catch up in terms of, grooming ourselves for the market that we're also having to learn. Not just learn how to sell, but also, trying to translate and adapt into this sort of new market. And the challenge for New Zealanders is that we have put a lot of the blame or a lot of the emphasis around the idea, or that, do we not have enough good ideas and enough good people, when reality, from my perspective, is that, as an ecosystem, it all has to move forward, including the investment piece. And, that has been a piece that has severely hamstrung a lot of our companies. And I can think of and have seen several examples where, a company has brought on board, a significant number of really small investors that's then hamstrung it in terms of, its growth going offshore. I guess maybe I'm not being that contentious, but the thing that I'm seeing is that a lot more of our investors, and they do come from, and particularly the trade me side of things, I see them a lot more in market and having conversations with funds of similar size or of greater size, so that they are starting to have those conversations that are then going to help them to help advise and shape some of the companies that are coming forward. But I guess I'm not seeing it as on such a granular level as you, Ben.
Sure. Just a thought, if anyone in the audience has any questions for me or us or anyone else, just put your hand up or jump up or whatever. That's cool. Good to do an interactive thing. I guess I've seen some comments from investors in New Zealand, and I've seen some deals done in New Zealand where investors with really, really big names in New Zealand that mean kind of probably nothing internationally have taken huge stakes in companies for, frankly, bugger all money, because those companies were probably a little bit naive and that big name or those big names were so impressive. And I think that's one of the risks. I think the problem that we have in New Zealand is that because we have a quite immature technology sector, we put a handful of individuals and companies up on a box, and those are the heroes. And anything they say in any sphere, related to any technology, related to any issue, is absolute gospel. And that's another level of sort of immaturity that if companies were to start more regularly going to the US and earlier, they wouldn't take that as gospel in the same way. I don't know, what's your thoughts on that, Kat?
I completely agree. I think that a lot of our companies, get into a situation where they are so focused on the cash element and the urgency of getting that cash in, instead of being able to look and be confident and have the right advice around them to make the best decision. Because raising money is, or rather raising investment is more than just the cash. You also need to have the right advice to obviously help you spend that money. It's just as important as it is having it in your bank account. And I see a lot of those pressures too, where companies, money's pouring out faster than it's coming in, so that they're often pushed into quite a tight corner of having to take the first deal that sort of crosses the table, rather than always looking at a couple of steps ahead and thinking about it a lot earlier when they need to raise that money and how to raise that money and the types of valuations, and being able to shop it around further, I guess, is really important.
So our conversation comes at an interesting time. For those in the audience that haven't heard about it, Punakaiki Fund was trying to do a listing on the alternative, or is trying to do a listing on the alternative exchange. They're trying to raise somewhere between $5 and $50 million, basically to be an early stage investment vehicle, so that mum and dad Kiwi investors can get in on early stage startups. And I would have thought, today Xero announced its quarterly annual earning or whatever, up 84%, something ridiculous. They're doing fantastically. It's awesome. Everyone's seen that. Everyone's jumping on board now that the share price is $19. It seems crazy to me that mums and dads wouldn't say, wow, we want to be into more of this. There's a lot of startups happening in New Zealand. We want to get behind an early stage fund like this. The interesting thing was the close-off date for Punakaiki was yesterday, and they didn't make even anywhere near their minimum figure. And that surprises me, A, from the perspective of Kiwi mums and dads who are keen on Xero and other stocks, but aren't willing to take a punt on a fund. It surprises me from the perspective of the fund managers. I mean, Milford Asset Management is big on Xero. They just did a big deal with Vend HQ. Obviously, they realised they were a little bit late to those two parties. It surprises me that the fund managers aren't in there. But what really surprises me is that the people, the Trade Me and Xero mafia, some of whom are very cashed up, and this isn't significant amounts of money to, none of them are there putting their hands up saying, yeah, we're going to support this ecosystem because this is important for New Zealand Inc. And I kind of, far be it from me, anyone that knows me, far be it from me to call bullshit, But all of those people that are saying that they're standing up for the New Zealand ecosystem, where are they when there's an opportunity there to actually support it? I don't know. I mean, Kat, I guess you're over there. You haven't seen the whole, the stuff around Punakaiki, but what are you seeing around things like that? Why can something like that not get off the ground?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Ben. And I guess at the end of the day, people, do they feel confident investing in technology companies? And even here, obviously in the Bay Area, I mean, the whole Bay Area and the whole mythology that sort of keeps it going is the Mark Zuckerbergs and the, Larry and Sergeys and people like that. But that really is the exception to the rule. As we know the numbers of failures is very, very high, and that, drilling down a little bit deeper, the realities around, what an exit looks like and the potential returns. I think it was Mark's sister said that a 5 to 7 year old company with revenues of around 2 to 3 million, staff of about 20 people, if they can even get to an exit, typically looks, I think it was between 7 and 11 million US, and a pure technology acquisition, tops out at around, 30 million. And if it's anything above that, you're getting into sort of revenues. So again, I think for the New Zealand investors, we're quite a way behind in terms of understanding a lot of that depth. And so for a lot of people, it is still too risky. And, again, going back to Xero and when we did the IPO in 2007, at the time, it was way out there. And, there was a lot of people that didn't want to be involved with it. And fortunately, there were also, a lot of people who did support it. But I think that maybe Punakaiki was a little early, or maybe people weren't comfortable with the mix. But I think that it is something that people, hopefully, as we start to see more success again amongst that sort of ecosystem, that it will broaden out and that people will become more comfortable with it.
Sure. So for anyone in the room that's interested, I personally don't care whether you do or you don't, but if you're interested in supporting New Zealand, Punakaiki has actually extended the IPO through to the 25th of October, I believe. So this is my early wedding present to Lance Wiggs, so you can go and invest. We've got a question over there. You yell and I'll translate. So the question was, why would Xero want to be involved with Punakaiki? No, my point was more that the people that have made money out of Xero, that are talking about a vibrant New Zealand ecosystem, I believe it's kind of beholden upon them to put something back, and they are putting something back, don't get me wrong, but to put something back and to support Punakaiki. Punakaiki might be the wrong vehicle, it might be a lemon, but all I'm saying is that it's important to actually put your money where your mouth is and support the New Zealand ecosystem. I'm no example, but I use myself as an example. I do a little bit of angel investing. I've done, I guess, 15 deals in the past 12 months, and frankly, New Zealand isn't a particularly attractive place to invest, but I've invested in 4 companies in New Zealand, 3 out of the Lightning Lab and 1 from down here, as much because it's a good way to support our local ecosystem as it is a particularly good investment, and it's not a particularly good investment for a bunch of different reasons that Kat's sorting. Kat, we've got a couple more minutes left, so key takeaways, key piece of advice. We've got in the room a bunch of people, we've got some startups. What are your pieces of advice beyond what I've already said, which is get a ticket on NZ8?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, get a ticket, really clarify in your own mind and be comfortable with what your exit looks like, and that it doesn't have to be, we want to be, acquired for this or whatever, but it's finding that stake in the ground that you can say, right, I want to create a company that's worth, $10 million, $20 million, $100 million, whatever it might be, and then step back from that and focus on those steps that you need to take that are going to get you there. And that is, if it's to get that and you've got, you need to make $2 million in revenue, then you either have to sell you know, what's that, 2 million, you know, items every day, you know, 2 million items over the year to get that revenue that then gets you that multiplier to 10 million. But too many New Zealand companies just don't or aren't capable of really articulating that, and you need to here. You need to be able to have those conversations and be confident in those conversations and be comfortable speaking about your target market, you know. And I think the other piece of advice that I have is to really, you know, look amongst the network of people that you know so that you can make connections to people over here, because people are everything. People and connections and networks are exactly how you accelerate a company.
Sure, and we've got one more question in the back here.
Okay, turn this on? Oh, okay. I'm in the process at the moment of working out how to raise $3 million. We've sort of got a deadline that says we want to have an IM out in about a month's time, or less than a month's time actually. You sort of said something, and I did this about 2001. I took a company to the NZX in New Zealand to raise money because after 2001 I couldn't raise any money, and I wound up with a gazillion ma and pa investors. In fact, I was looking at my investment statement yesterday, and 93% of the company is owned by 10 individuals, and then we've got 400 investors, and we delisted off the NZX because raising money from our shareholders was a complete waste of time. So I'm about to do this whole thing again, and you sort of said small investors. Originally I was looking at about 1.5 million, so I was looking at 15 people, 100 grand each. Now I'm looking at 30 people at 100 grand each, thinking that's too complicated. And then you said, why don't I go to America? Well, I've got my development plan goes right out to 2022. I can tell you exactly how many employees I'm going to have in 2022. I can tell you my revenue per customer, per everything. I plan to be in America by the end of next year or the beginning of the following year. Do you reckon I can raise $3 million in a hurry out of America? I currently have revenues in New Zealand and revenues out of Bangalore in India.
I mean, my quick thought would be the revenue part doesn't matter. Is this a valid prospect? Is the idea there, and can the team execute? And if both of those things are yes, then you can raise $3 million easily. Kat, what's your thought?
Yeah, I mean, without knowing what the business is, what the market looks like, pretty hard to comment. But you know, I think I would agree with Ben, broadly speaking, that you know if you can meet that criteria, then there's certainly no reason not to.
Awesome. Kat, I want to thank you for your time today, and I want to thank you for what you're doing for all of us that are sitting back here in New Zealand. I know you get to live in a really cool city, so it's not all bad, but you're fighting the good fight, so thanks for that.
Thank you, Ben.